Y'all, it's been a minute since we have visited Visions of Glory, but we're back. Here we're going. We're going to break it down. We're going to get into the next little segment of this. And this one gets a little bit interesting, y'all. We're talking about Zelda. We're talking about, some adventures, rolling the dice, doing all this kind of stuff. So buckle your seatbelts up and let's dive in. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. Sofa's still back there. I'm still right here. The boys are over there sleeping, and my name's Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new, my name is still Paul, and I do appreciate you joining us today. Now, before we get started, I'd like to say, I ain't no cop, I ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't no doctor, okay? Ain't none of that fancy credentials stuff, all right? Only credentials we got up in here is that sofa, whoosh, and my sass. So just keep that in mind. These are just my opinions, theories, all that kind of stuff on very public information. I encourage you to do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and we'll share them in a friendly-like manner down in the comment section below. Now, like I said, we are continuing on with our reading of Visions of Glory, and we are at chapter 5 now. Caves, keys, and goblins. Lord, hallelujah. Makes me want to get up and dance. So we're just going to keep reading through this, and here we go. So, 3 visitors is the first little passage here. Okay, so about a week later, I awoke in the morning with the impression that I was going to have 3 visitors that day. I liked having visitors because I was still recovering from the surgery and infection, and boredom was a problem at times. It also struck me in a comical way because Ebenezer Scrooge had been told that he would have 3 visitors too. And you know how that worked out. Yeah. The first visitor was an older gentleman in our ward. He came and sat with me and read scriptures to me. He was kind to do this, but he stayed 2 hours, which left me quite tired. I slept for a long time after he left. The second visitor came at about 5:30 that evening. This was a brother from our ward who just dropped by on his way home from work. He said he felt impressed to come talk to me. He stayed an hour and said that he felt impressed by the Spirit to tell me a few things. Okay, what he had to say. The first was that I could be healed and that I needed to work on obtaining the faith to be healed. The second thing was that I had many things to do before I died. These 2 things struck me as interesting. I believed he was inspired to tell me those things because I knew that at some point I would be healed. I had seen it in a vision several times. I had seen myself in a body free of disease and doing much more, but on a greater scope than he was implying. I felt like I did have the faith to obtain that blessing already and was moving as quickly as I could to obtain it. I didn't tell him that just a week ago an angel came into my bedroom and reminded me of these promises and healed my mind of my I'm going to die thinking. I accepted his inspiration in bringing that message to me. It was another witness of what I already knew to be true. By the time he left, I was completely exhausted and I was not looking forward to a third visitor because the first 2 had exhausted me without leaving me with something I could truly use to upgrade my endurance or change my circumstances. I wasn't feeling critical or ungrateful for their kindness, just tired. That same night, I couldn't sleep because of the unrelenting pain in my face and chest. I was no longer fearful of dying, but the surgeries in Mexico left me in a tremendous amount of pain. Because of our financial condition, I could not afford prescription pain medication, and the only thing I had were Tylenol and ibuprofen. They simply were not sufficient. The third visitor. My wife and I were watching the evening news in our bedroom at about 10:15 p.m. I heard a loud knock at the front door, which was only a few feet from our bedroom door. I asked Lynn, "Did you hear someone knocking on the door?" She answered that she had not. She asked if she could go check the door. I realized in that moment that this was my third visitor and that I would have to go with them. I was actually thinking it was another person from my ward. I'm not sure why I thought I would have to go anywhere, but I said, "No, don't answer it, please. I will have to go with them and I'm just too tired." She gave me a sympathetic look, not because I was tired, but because she assumed I was hearing things now. She turned off the lights, kissed me, and rolled over to go to sleep. I couldn't sleep because my pain and exhaustion were so overwhelming. I know this sounds odd, but I really was too exhausted to sleep. I heard another series of knocks at the door. Whoever was at the door began knocking every few seconds, over and over. I lay there thinking, if I get up, I will have to go with them. I finally began to realize that it might be an angel coming to take me from mortality. This was the ongoing war between my understanding of my physical condition and what beautiful angel had so powerfully taught me, that I was not going to die. Up until now, my faith had been stronger than my thinking, but on this particular night, I found myself once again wavering. I chided myself and anchored my faith once again. I must have fallen asleep because I awakened at 12:50 a.m. to someone knocking again on the front door. It was not an impatient knock, but just sounded like someone knocking. This time I realized the knocking was on our bedroom door, not the front door. I knew it was not one of the kids, because the knock was stronger and higher up on the door. The thought came to me again that maybe this was part of dying and I would have to go with them. I realized that I was soaking wet from perspiration from the few hours I slept. I felt desperately ill, the kind of ill where you are too weak to raise your arm or to cry out for help. I had incredible pain in my chest again. Despite what the beautiful angel had told me, I knew I could not live much longer without a miracle, which I did expect, but had not yet to receive. And still the knocking on my bedroom door continued to resound with intermittent and insistent knocking. I immediately left my body. I think my body was just too ill to keep my spirit within it anymore. I moved upward and out of my body to a sitting position on the bed. I looked back to my right and could see my face and shoulders propped up in the pillow. My face was pale with a look of pain, and my body was not breathing. I felt so grateful to be out of it. The pain had stopped. I felt full of energy and vitality. You have to remember, I had died twice before, and this time the relief I immediately felt by being out of my body was almost like a drug. It infused me with euphoria and liberation. I was so grateful to be out of that sick, pain-racked body. I was rejoicing, and I felt far more than thrilled. I was jubilant, even though I fully expected to return to my body and live on to complete my mission. I could not doubt the angel's words, and for this moment I was overwhelmed with gratitude to be pain-free, even for a while. I stood effortlessly and walked to the door to answer the knock. I looked back at my body, which was still lying in my bed beside my wife. I felt connected to my body, as if a divine rubber band was connecting us. I knew that this was the spiritual assurance that I would be back. This was not death, but another chance to learn and see the things of God. The next section is called My Angel Guide. I tried to open the door and could not. My hand passed through the doorknob, so I walked through it. I found myself facing a pleasant-looking male angel. He was an angel of light and had the full brightness of the other angels. I had seen who had come to minister to the newly dead, but the instant I looked upon him, I knew that he had not come to take me from earth. He was not the Grim Reaper, so to speak. He had been my guide on several other out-of-body experiences, so I recognized him even though I didn't know his name. It was a spiritual recognition. I trusted him and was ready and willing to go with him. The angel spoke to me verbally, not to my spirit as in other instances. He had a body and was not a spirit. I realized that I, now in my spirit self, was less substantial than he was. He held out his arm and said, "Are you ready to go?" I replied most gratefully, "Yes!" Unlike the other angels who had just floated through the walls and doors, he opened my front door by turning the knob and walked outside. It was daytime outside. It didn't even seem odd that in my bedroom it was a little before 1 a.m. and outside it was midday. What I concluded from this was that I was now in a vision, even though this felt real and tactile. My angel closed the door to my home. We walked down the front steps and started walking down the sidewalk. He was on my right with his arm around mine. I could feel him and the warmth of his arm. It felt so good to walk again. I hadn't been on my feet for weeks and had been ill even longer. It felt marvelous to do all of this without pain or fatigue. I felt as if I could walk without effort for days. I felt exuberant to be with him, like a little child who wanted to express his happiness by running, jumping, and laughing. I didn't, of course. I wanted to remain with him. I understood that he had something to teach me. We kept walking a long distance. We walked past businesses and houses. Cars passed us on streets, and people walked past us on the sidewalk. I'm sure they couldn't see us because we stepped off of the walk to let them pass. It was a visionary experience, but it was realistic. There was a light breeze, and I saw that the breeze was blowing the angel's hair and affecting his clothes. I looked down at myself, and I realized that I was in my pajamas. I didn't feel awkward at all, but I noted that I could not feel the breeze, and it was not affecting me or my clothing. I thought, how strange. Here I am in the presence of an angel, and he's the one with the body, and I'm the spirit, and we're walking on foot up into the mountains. It was marvelous to me. I wanted to question him, but I felt like I should wait. I felt no labor or fatigue. I was walking effortlessly, which for a deathly ill person is like unexpectedly winning the lottery. Then the angel said to me, "The first thing we will see will explain to you while you are experiencing life as it presently is, okay? I replied, great. I would love to know the answer to that question. He was friendly and interested in me. My mind was spinning with questions, and I'm sure he was hearing all this. He smiled frequently as we walked in silence. I felt like he knew me better than I knew myself. He was completely engaged in the event of showing me what I needed to know. Even though we were not chatting as we went, I knew that there was purpose and everything he did. The next thing is caves and bars. We proceeded up a canyon I had been to many times. We walked a long way to where the paved road gave way to gravel. I could feel the road beneath my feet. And the wind beneath my wings. I'm just joking, it doesn't say that. But I just felt like the opportunity was there, okay? I had to take it, okay? So let's just start that over, get back on track. I'm sorry, let me get back in character. Okay, so I could feel the road beneath my feet, but we were moving faster than walking speed, as if moving on a moving sidewalk at the airport. We arrived at the canyon quickly. The scene was familiar to me. I had been there many times on picnics and outings. As we stepped onto the gravel, the scene changed to a different set of blue-gray mountains with tall cliffs, facing me with 3 towering mountain peaks jutting into the sky above the cliffs. The sky changed to a more sunset hue, even though it was midday. There was a stretch of water between where we stood and the mountain, as if we were on some island, out in an inlet looking at the mainland. I could smell the ocean air and heard the waves breaking on a cliff face. It is a very pretty scene they're describing. I did not know where the vision was taking me. I was given to understand that I was now looking into the future at what the purpose of my life would be. I concluded that I was seeing a type or a metaphor of the purpose of my life, not actual events that would happen just the way I was seeing them, but I also understood that the mission being suggested by this metaphor would actually happen, if not exactly as I was seeing it now. I began to see our surroundings through spiritual eyes, as the angel was seeing it. He asked me, "Hey boy, do you see that mountain?" "Yes." "What do you see, boy?" I walked closer. There were lights high up on the mountainside. Finally, I realized they were coming from the mouths of 4 big man-made caves. The caverns were about 12 feet tall and about 150 feet wide at their opening. The openings had bars on them, as if they were prisons. The caves extended deep into the mountain, with doors leading beyond what I could see. The 4 caverns occupied most of the mountainside. I replied, "I see 4 large chambers cut into the mountain with bars on them. Whatever does that mean?" He replied, "Look, we need to come closer." The view changed instantly. I found myself standing right in front of the bars, on a wide ledge between the bars and the cliff face. We were high up in the mountainside. There was a wide but steep road descending down to the valley below. I looked in and saw thousands of people in the chambers. There were rooms with 4 large groups, cooking areas, and massive gardens of flowers and vegetables. Deep into the cave, I could see closed doors along the back of the chambers. I assumed that they were bedrooms, storage rooms, and other necessary accommodations. The people did not seem to see me, even though some of them were quite close, so that I could see them clearly. They were dressed well and going about their lives. They did not seem to consider themselves captives, but were healthy and happy. Children of all ages played and tended to chores. I watched them without understanding. Their whole circumstance seemed so improbable to me. "Who are these people? Why are they in here?" I asked. The angel pointed to the locks in the bars. The locks were on the inside. They had locked themselves into the caverns, and the bars were of their own construction. "What does this mean?" I asked the angel. "Why have they locked themselves in the mountains?" He smiled and replied, "This is right. Okay, these individuals have locked themselves away because of the persecution, abuses, mistreatment they have endured from religious organizations, okay, and from the abuse of governments and the authority of the world." I perceived that this was both a good and bad thing. They had isolated themselves from the world, but they had also isolated themselves from further light and truth. I asked, "Why are you showing me this? What does it have to do with me?" Then he showed me in vivid detail the pains, the sufferings, and abuses these people had endured while living on earth. They had been persecuted and killed for generations before they found a way to separate themselves from the world. He said, "Only individuals like you who have been willing to undergo similar pain and abuses as these people have, will they ever listen to and trust, okay? You must continue to drinketh of this bitter cuppeth and not become bitter yourself, okay? Okay, now look, this will give you the experience and knowledge you need so that when you are called to work with these people, they will trust you, boy, and recognize in you that you are a fellow sufferer and a refugee from persecution. These sufferings and your personal triumph over them will be written on your very soul, okay? And into the sinews of your body, okay? And they will recognize it and they will trust you. Then he said something that I have pondered for years. He added, they will see that you also belong to the fellowship of the suffering of Christ. Okay, the next section is called The Key. While I was trying to understand all of this, a young woman came toward us, carrying a key in both hands. She did not look like the people within the caverns, but she was an angel of light, like my escort. She wore a long, white, glowing robe. She was beautiful and, well, quite young. He took the key from her and handed it to me with both hands, with great reverence and care, as if it were precious and fragile. The young woman, angel, remained, watching me hold the key with great interest. I studied it for a moment, marveling at the beauty of the craftsmanship. I turned it in my hand several times, admiring it. It was unlike anything I'd ever really seen. The key was about a foot long, shaped like a modern key, with a rounded handle and a shank with a saw-like ridges on it, and grooves along the side. It was heavy, as if made from solid metal, which looked and hefted like solid gold. Not the TV show Solid Gold, but actual solid gold. Those are my words, not the book's. The feel of the metal was soft, like velvet, and not hard like gold. The handle was about 6 inches across with precious gems and fused into the metal. It appeared as if the jewels had been cast into the metal, because I could not feel them on the smooth surface of the key. But each stone was clearly visible and sparkling within the metal, as if the metal were transparent over the stones. Each gem seemed to have a very tiny light source within it, which made the key sparkle like glitter. Not the movie glitter of Mariah Carey, but glitter like actual glitter. Those are my words, not the book's. With light that came from within the key, rather than as a reflection of the sun. The pointed end was emerald green, the shank was blood red, and the handle was a vivid blue. It looked odd, perhaps millions of years old. Though it was not scratched, worn, or damaged, it was so intricate and beautiful that I thought of the Leona, which had been crafted by God himself. I am certain that no human could have made this key. I noted that there were symbols on the key which I could not read. Thank you very much. And wouldn't you know it, the next little passage is called The Meaning of the Symbols. What do the symbols on this key mean, boy? My escort asked me. I immediately felt the meaning of the symbols enter my mind. The key itself represented a mission to rescue the people whom I could see on the other side of the bars. The key represented the ability to unlock the bars that kept them in their self-imposed prison. The colors represented the qualifications of whoever God sent to actually accomplish the work of unlocking the bars. The red stood for sacrifice, but not in the way that I had previously understood sacrifice. The knowledge I had received included a full understanding of the condescension and atonement of Christ, but it also symbolized a willingness to likewise sacrifice as Christ has, to be prepared for this mission. In order to receive the key and the assignment as it represented, one had to be prepared by sacrificing their will, their earthly possessions, their health if called upon, or even their lives if need be, to follow the path of God ordained to prepare that person with charity, faith, doctrinal purity, sound understanding, and most of all, perfect obedience to God's will. This is the course Christ had submitted himself to, though his suffering was far greater and for all mankind. The lesser suffering we go through is to prepare an individual for their specific mission. It took me years to realize this is the reason the angel called it the fellowship of the suffering of Christ. I was given to understand that there was no other ways and no other path to this type of service. It was a path that could require the shedding of blood and sacrifices of similar magnitude. When a servant of of God followed this path to its end, it left a recognizable mark upon the servant, a glow, if you will, of righteousness. It was a preparation that made it impossible to fail, which those to whom he or she would minister would recognize and then follow. The blue handle represented the royal bloodline, which I immediately knew was the Latter-day Priesthood. We also have heard it called the Holy Priesthood after the order of the Son of God. The blue represented three things. First, the receipt and righteous magnification of the present priesthood. Second, it represented the receipt of the fullness of that same priesthood when worthiness in the timetable of God called it forth. Okay. Third, it represented a foreordination to this very mission to release these people. Only that specifically ordained officer of the priesthood could manipulate the key. The handle is how it is gripped and operated. The emerald green tip represented a renewal and recreation of life. The tip is the business end, if you will, of the key. It enters the lock first, and it must be perfectly aligned with the lock in order for any other part of the key to operate. The green tip signified the full outcome of the red and blue, sacrifice and priesthood, which, as described in the oath and covenant of the priesthood, brings about a renewal of the body. This is why the green was entitled renewal and recreation of life. This renewal can represent anything from prolonged mortal life to a healing of all disease to be translated. As was John the Beloved and Enoch's city, it is also represented the renewal that these individuals would pass through as they accepted Christ as their Savior and no longer were afraid of Him and those who represented Him. They must accept the ordinances of the gospel, which would allow each of them to be renewed and eventually set free from their present self-imposed imprisonment. The key, in my vision, is representative of the key every Latter-day Builder of Zion will obtain for their specific mission. Each individual will probably not see an actual key being handed to them, but they will go through the same process that was shown to me of sacrifice, priesthood, and renewal. It took me many years until just recently, as in fact, to fully identify the meaning of the parts of the key. Even knowing what the angels showed and taught me, it has taken my soul a long time to realize how it could actually come to pass for myself to make me into a builder of Zion. I have come to understand that in order to complete my life's mission, I had to receive this key in the ordained way by becoming a member of the fellowship of the suffering of Christ, and by doing it freely, willingly, even joyfully. I now understand that it is a personal journey of great consequence. It is not a pathway for seekers of comfort and casual service. It did not realize I was even upon this path, or that my suffering was a part of any path other than a process of my life. Nor had I ever considered that I was one of those whose premortal calling included any unique service until the angel handed me that key. This key represented the full course and calling of the priesthood. Only with all three of these elements can we claim the blessings of the honor of serving in any great cause. When we do this, we are no longer serving the church, our families, or even ourselves. We are serving Jesus Christ directly and doing the Father's work of preparing the world for the end of time and the return of Christ. Along with all of this information came the confirmation that what I was seeing was not real, but was a metaphor to teach me why I was going through the hardships and suffering that had been such a big part of my mortal journey. I was being taught that all of my life I have been engaged in this process of preparing to meet the qualifications and attributes of one who will be handed a key to a portion of the latter-day work of building Zion. In this mighty work, we will free people from their self-imposed prisons, whether real or figurative, and bring them to Zion. The key did not represent a call to preside or to be a latter-day prophet. It represented the process of acquiring, through the atonement of Christ, the degree of personal purity and sanctification that qualifies the recipient to serve in this great work. It is a work that, as you will see in the future visions I will describe, is fully organized and carried out by the Latter-day Church. This is not a path that leads outside of the church or even on a parallel course with the church, but one that brings you into the heart of the ordained mission of the Latter-day Church to prepare the world for the return of Christ. The only additional meaning I gained was to show me that I actually could accomplish this, that it really was possible, and that I should be seeking to complete my qualifications and then finish the work the Lord was showing me was mine to do. I should continue to accept that the process of my life was not taking me to a physical death, but to the possibility of grand service in the latter-day scene. I felt this admonition enter my soul without words. Spencer, you are out of your body, but you are not dead. Don't give up, because these things need to be sealed into your heart and mind. These are the things you promised me you would do. So don't give up. I am giving you this information to bolster your courage to go forward and to strive to accomplish these things. Don't be discouraged about going back into your body. Your body will not hinder you from your preparations. It was necessary to bring you here to give you a significant glimpse of the work you will do and to prepare you for what it will cost you to qualify to do it. This information entered my soul rich with love and empathy, but also with deep power. I knew it was not my angel escort speaking to me. I was just beginning to understand, standing there with this heavy key in my hands when the angel said, "What do you see now, boy?" Okay. So, we're going to end it here for this session. Very quickly, let's go over some final thoughts here on this. So, it's giving Zelda, it's giving King's Quest, it's giving Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm here for that. I actually was more interested in reading this, like the key and all that kind of stuff. And again, here's the thing, and it just depends on the filter, the lens that you look at this through, right? Like, I'm looking at this as like fiction, okay? Like a story to be told. And so through that, like, that's where I've been like, okay, I need like interesting things to happen to grab my attention with this. It's like this, I was like, oh, this is like really interesting, the key and the this and that. Yeah, it got flat there a little bit, but it is what it is. Now, also in the realm of like, if you follow me for a while, then you'll know what I mean when I say this, of my body rejecting the book. So I did start to reject it a couple of times. You might have noticed where I was like kind of going, like I can feel my eyes going like, oh my gosh. You know, part of it is, you know, I'm old. Okay, let's just call that out. I'm old. My vision's not great. My vision's not great. And it's hard for me to sit here and read like that, but doing these smaller sessions like that, I'll be able to knock this out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to try and keep these in this 30-minute range for this and just put out little episodes periodically or whatever. And again, as it's getting interesting, okay, great, because again, remember, we're looking at or I am at least, through the lens of like Lori and Chad. We have Lori's trial coming up. I'm sure we're going to hear sermons from her. I want to know the chokehold that this has on people. And so I'm looking at it through that. And again, what I'm getting is this like, it's imagine going down, and I'm not trying to discount anybody who might have had some kind of near-death experience or something like that, okay? I have not, so there's that, right? I'm not trying to say I don't believe in it, none of that stuff, right? Somebody's truth is their truth and their experience, and I respect that. So I, however, don't believe it when it comes from Lori and Chad. So that's probably a good way to say that. I get more narcissism, so reading this where I'm like, oh, yeah, you take something like this where this person's talking about, oh yeah, I was hearing voices, they superseded, it was the manager of my angel. Okay, the manager of the angels came down and talked to me. Okay, I don't know about y'all. Y'all might have dealt with just the basic worker angels. I was dealing with management, okay? You know what I mean? So you get somebody like Lori or Chad in there where they're like, oh, I was dealing with regional manager angels. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing. So it's making sense where I'm like, oh, yeah, the self I can see. You get somebody with some unhinged mental stuff going on and self-righteousness, and you throw this in the mix, plays. It's a wrap, literally. So there's that. And that's it. I do thank y'all for suffering through that with me. Until next time, if you're still watching, I do appreciate it. Let me know what you think downstairs in the comment section below if you are still watching. If you could drop some little sofas off there for myself, Rosco and Spirit, the boys who have slept through our little reading. Don't really blame them. So that we can all hang out in the comment section, talk about this book, the cases, everything we talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we meander our way down there to do that, we'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.